Let me ask you something honest. Have you ever found yourself checking your phone every 5 minutes, waiting for a message from someone who doesn't seem nearly as eager to talk to you? Have you ever made yourself smaller, quieter, more agreeable, more available, just to keep someone interested? If you have, you're not weak. You're not broken. You're human. But here's what Carl Jung, one of the greatest minds to ever study the human psyche, would tell you if he were sitting across from you right now. The person you are chasing is not the problem. The wound inside you that makes you chase is. And once you understand what that wound is, really understand it, you will never run after someone who isn't running toward you again. Stay with me, because this gets deep. For those who don't know, Carl Gustav Jung was a Swiss psychiatrist and psychoanalyst who lived from 1875 to 1961. He was originally a student of Sigmund Freud, but eventually broke away because he believed the human psyche was far more complex and far more spiritual than Freud gave it credit for. Jung introduced concepts we still use today: the introvert and extrovert, the collective unconscious, archetypes, and most importantly for today's conversation, the shadow and the animus. Jung didn't just study what was wrong with people. He studied what made people whole. And one of the biggest things standing between a person and wholeness, according to Jung, was this: projecting your unmet needs onto someone else and then chasing them to fill a void that only you can fill. That's a mouthful. Let's break it down. Jung believed that every woman carries within her psyche an inner masculine figure. He called it the animus. Now don't let the word masculine throw you off. This isn't about gender politics. Jung was talking about psychological energy. The animus represents qualities like assertiveness, direction, logic, ambition, and decisiveness, energies that every person, regardless of gender, needs to function fully. Here's where it gets interesting. When a woman hasn't developed her own animus, meaning she hasn't claimed those qualities within herself, she tends to project them onto a man. She sees a man who seems confident and purposeful, and something inside her lights up. She mistakes that feeling for love. She mistakes it for destiny. But Jung would say, that's not love. That's projection. She's not falling for him. She's falling for the part of herself she hasn't yet met. And that's why she chases him. Because losing him feels like losing herself. Because when he pulls away, it doesn't just sting. It feels like annihilation. Does that ring any bells? So what does this look like in real life? What are the signs, the actual behaviors, that Jung's framework tells us we should never chase? Number 1. He is inconsistent. He's warm one day, cold the next. He texts you paragraphs at 2 a.m. and then disappears for 3 days. Jung would call this a man who has not integrated his own shadow, the part of himself he hasn't acknowledged or accepted. An unintegrated shadow in a man shows up as inconsistency, emotional unavailability, and hot and cold behavior. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Inconsistency is not a mystery to solve. It is not a puzzle waiting for the right woman to unlock it. It is a signal. And chasing it only pulls you deeper into an anxious loop that has nothing to do with love. Number 2. He never chooses you clearly. He keeps you close enough that you stay, but never close enough that you feel secure. Jung talked about people who live in a state of enantiodromia, a term he borrowed from the ancient Greek philosopher Heraclitus. It basically means the tendency of things to flip into their opposite. A man who can't commit is often unconsciously terrified of the very intimacy he seems to offer. He wants connection but flees it. Staying available to him traps you in his unresolved inner war. Number 3. He makes you feel like you have to earn his love. This one is crucial. When you are constantly performing, being funnier, more attractive, more understanding, more low maintenance, you have stepped out of yourself and into a role. Jung was extremely clear that any relationship where you must wear a mask to be accepted is a relationship that will eventually hollow you out. He wrote about the persona, the social mask we wear to be acceptable to others. When you shape yourself around a man's preferences, you are living entirely in your persona. And the longer you live there, the further you drift from your authentic self. A man worth keeping does not require your persona. He wants you, shadow and all. Now here's the part that nobody wants to hear. Ready? Jung believed that we are never truly drawn to another person randomly. We are drawn to people who mirror our own unconscious patterns. He called this the repetition of the complex. We unconsciously recreate familiar emotional dynamics because they feel like home, even when home was painful. If you grew up with a parent who was emotionally unavailable, who gave love conditionally, who was sometimes warm and sometimes cold, your nervous system learned to read uncertainty as love. It learned that love requires effort, performance, and pursuit. So when a man is distant and hard to reach, something in you doesn't see a red flag. Something in you sees home. And you chase it. Not because you're naive. Not because you have low standards. But because your nervous system is running an old program. One written in childhood, long before you had any say in it. Jung called this the work of individuation, the lifelong process of becoming aware of your unconscious patterns so they stop running your life from the shadows. The moment you see the pattern, you begin to break it. So if you shouldn't chase, what should you do? Jung's answer is one of the most radical things in all of psychology, and also one of the most freeing. Turn around and face yourself. The energy you are pouring into chasing someone who isn't choosing you, that energy belongs to you. It is yours. It was always yours. The confidence you want him to give you? Develop it. The security you want him to provide? Build it within yourself. The validation you are starving for? Start giving it to yourself, one honest, courageous act at a time. This is what Jung meant by integrating the animus. You stop looking for a man to be your strength. You become your own strength. And something extraordinary happens when you do that. You stop being attracted to men who are unavailable. Not because you decided to make better choices with your head, but because something deep inside you shifts. The wound that used to hunger for the hot and cold guys simply heals. And healed wounds don't throb for the same old pain. You start to find yourself drawn to men who are clear, who are consistent, who say what they mean. Men who don't require you to shrink. And at first, that might even feel boring, because your nervous system doesn't recognize safety as exciting yet. That's normal. Give it time. Calm is not boring. Calm is what love actually feels like when it's real. Jung once wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." Chasing someone who doesn't fully want you is, in a strange way, easier than doing that. Because as long as you're focused on him, you don't have to look at yourself. You don't have to ask the harder questions. You don't have to sit with the quiet and learn who you actually are beneath all the trying. But that quiet? That's where your life is. That's where you are. Never chase a man who makes you feel like you are not enough. Not because you deserve better, though you do, but because that chase is pulling you away from the only relationship that can never be taken from you. The one you have with yourself. If this hits something in you, share it with someone who needs it. And if you want to go deeper into Jung's work on relationships and the unconscious, drop a comment. I read every single one. Take care of yourself. I'll see you in the next one.